Congress is the most complicated, the most infernal, the most difficult, the most problematic legislative, any kind of government body in the entire universe. And you have to learn to work it. This is something we don't quite know about Obama, but I'll talk about that a little later. What am I talking about? What am I talking about? First, let's look at the complexity. Okay, ready? I try to explain this to foreign audiences. They go, whoa. Okay, here comes the House. 3 different committees say, well, we're going to write our own bills. 2 bills actually pass. Then it goes to the Rules Committee. Did you know that every time a bill goes to the floor of Congress, we make up new rules under which to play by? Yes, that goes to the Rules Committee. How much can the majority get away with? Then there were 3 different pieces of legislation, right? So the majority leader has to say, okay, I'll take this from this, and this from this, and this from this. Oh, you don't like that? Okay, we'll renegotiate it some more. Then it finally gets under its own separate rules to the House floor. The Senate, same thing. House floor. Now it needs 60 votes. There are 6 different places to filibuster this bill. Then they've got 2 different bills. They go to a committee. That committee then, behind closed doors, conference, writes a whole nother proposal, a whole nother bill, goes back to both houses, and then they have to pay. That is a process and a half. You gotta learn to work the inner workings of Congress. We listened to tapes when we were doing this book of Lyndon Johnson, who was the greatest master at this in the 20th century. Here's an example. At one point, they were going to kill Medicare by raising Social Security so high, getting so much money pumped into Social Security, the Social Security tax would go so high, no room for Medicare. This is right before the '64 election. A guy named Wilbur Mills is behind this. And at the last minute, Senator Russell Long votes to knock this thing down. Long hated Medicare. He was fighting it for years. The press runs up to him. Senator Long, why did you vote for it to save Medicare? Lyndon told me to, he says. Lyndon told me to. Lyndon told you to. That's sort of in the history books. Lyndon, we discovered a tape 6 weeks after Lyndon told me to. It goes like this. Senator Long, Mr. President, they're going to close the biggest base in Louisiana. You got to stop them. It's going to really hurt me. Well, he says, Johnson, you can hear him eating his lunch. Well, Senator Long, if it's on McNamara's list, there's nothing I can do. Senator Johnson, I'm begging you. You got to help me. President Johnson, you got to help me. I'm sorry, Senator Long, nothing I can do. Long pause. Lyndon Johnson, Senator Long, Mr. President, when you needed help on Medicare, I didn't go back on you. Long pause. I'll get back to you. 10 minutes later, Senator Long calls him back. Senator Long, you got nothing to worry about. You can sleep well tonight, long as you are my boss man. I'm going to vote for you every time. Notice what happened. Johnson said, I need that chit from you. Long gave him that chit because he knew when he needed it, that chit would come back. That's a negotiator. That's trusting someone. You know this dirty, rotten secret that we discovered? We discovered this doing our research. Johnson actually calls McNamara. Mac said, are you nuts? Long's too powerful. I'm not going to cut any bases in his district. So it was all false. But Johnson never let on. So Long is dead. Johnson's dead. The secret can now be told. One more story, just to give you a sense of this internal negotiations. The last one I tell, I promise. So here's another Lyndon Johnson story. The great history of Medicare goes like this. Wilbur Mills, the same guy who tried to screw Medicare before the '64 election, sees there's a huge landslide in '64, sees it's going through. So what does he do? He takes the administration bill called Medicare, which just was going to pay for hospitals. And he puts next to it a bill that the Republicans, that the AMA put together that was just going to pay physicians. We now know it as Medicare Part B. And he took a bill that the Republicans just paid for poor people. They thought it would be a poorer program if it paid for poorer people. And at the last minute, Wilbur Mills says, why don't we pass all 3? Johnson's aide was sitting there, a guy named Wilbur Cohen. He goes, oh my God, what's Wilbur Mills doing? He goes running to Johnson. He goes, Wilbur Mills just tripled the size of Medicare. What do I do? Do we have the money for it? What do we do? And Johnson goes, I think I'll go call my brother. Well, that's not the answer. And Wilbur Cohen says, Mr. President, what do you mean? This is all in Johnson's autobiography. And Johnson says, you don't know that story? Well, every Texan knows that story. Turns out there's a guy, he wants to be a train switchman. And they take him to do the test. So put him in front of the train switch. They say, train coming north 50 miles an hour, train going south 50 miles an hour. What do you do? He says, I go call my brother. Well, that's not the right answer. They look at it, no, it's not the right answer. Why'd you go call your brother? Why, he ain't never seen no train wreck before, says the man. Give Wilbur the money. Give him the money. Well, it's all right. And so he goes back, and within 24 hours, the bill is written, and it's now got Medicare Part A, which is all Johnson asked for, Medicare Part B, and Medicaid. At the last minute, all thrown in. When Republicans of a certain generation said we opposed Medicare, we had a better program, what they're actually referring to is Medicaid. When we were looking at tapes of and Johnson lies in his autobiography, as it turns out. He just says, Wilbur Mills just became from the villain to the hero for the old folks. And then we got the tapes, just released 2 years ago. What happens? Days after Johnson is elected, takes office after Kennedy's assassination, he's calling Wilbur Mills. Wilbur, I gotta have Medicare. Wilbur, I gotta have Medicare. Wilbur says, I can't pass Medicare. I've been fighting this thing all my life. He says, Wilbur, say it wasn't good enough. Make it bigger. Wilbur, put some money in there for doctors. Wilbur, put some money in there for poor people. Wilbur, this could make you famous. Wilbur, this could make you vice president. Over and over again, Johnson's calling. He designed the whole thing. And then he says, Wilbur, you'll get all the credit. Wilbur Mills liked the sound of that. For 40 years, we never knew that it was Johnson that was behind it all. For 40 years. And yet, here it is. There is a negotiator who knew how to give the credit to someone else, how to pass the credit. We don't know this about a Barack Obama. Is he a great negotiator? Because that's what it's going to take. Great negotiations in the bowels of this administrative labyrinth that is our Congress.